Do you have any idea how quickly technological advancements are being made in China? The engineers deliberate about potential new developments one day, and then the next day they put their ideas into action. Not only are the lives of individuals in China being improved by some of these technologies, but they are also having a good impact on people all around the globe. Recently, China completed another project of this kind, which will have an effect that is felt all over the globe for a very long time. While Western experts praised China, many in the West began to condemn the country, but their hypocrisy was called into question when they began to imitate Chinese practices. In the past, they referred to China as a copycat, but today they are acting in the same manner. Ready? Let's move on. Do you have any idea how rapidly China is progressing in terms of their technological capabilities? The next day, the engineers put their new discoveries into effect, and some of these breakthroughs are not only making life better in China, but they are also having a positive influence on the lives of people in other parts of the globe. China has just finished another project of this kind, which will have repercussions for a very long time all over the globe. The Western world started to criticize China while experts were praising it in the interim, but their hypocrisy became obvious when they started to replicate China's practices. The term copycat was originally used to refer to China, but nowadays they just use the word themselves. It is important that you be informed of the potential threat to your health posed by carbon emissions. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about the topic of today's film, which is how to cut down on carbon. The stage that is most significant is the one in which you identify what contributes the most to the acceleration of carbon emissions. Carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere as a byproduct of the combustion of a wide variety of fuels and other forms of energy. But a nation that must reduce its carbon emissions must first determine the sector of its economy that is responsible for the greatest portion of those emissions. With this graph, you should be able to determine the sector of the economy that contributes the most to carbon emissions. The majority of nations are aware of the situation. They are aware that domestic consumption, agricultural production, and transportation are the three businesses that release the most carbon into the atmosphere. Yet, the efforts by themselves are not sufficient to minimize carbon emission. You may be wondering why the answer is really rather simple to implement. It will take a country several years to get its carbon emissions down to a more manageable level. I will explain why it will take so long if it is just concerned with one sector of the economy. If a country makes the decision to limit the amount of carbon dioxide released by its manufacturing and mining industries, the first and most important task will be to locate alternatives to fossil fuels. Second, they need to ensure that every industry is under their control. There are three types of businesses: those administered by the government, those owned individually, and those held by local communities. As a result, it will take many years to get them under control. Notwithstanding this, there is a significant possibility that the private sector will not accept the alternative fuel, even in the event that the government discovers it and starts using it in the areas that it controls. It is probable that the cost was the driving factor for this rejection. Due to the fact that the price of the alternative fuel will be noticeably greater than the price of fossil fuels, it would seem that none of the options are viable when looking at the numbers. Bill believes that such fancies are nothing more than made-up stories from childhood. With the help of this argument, we are able to appreciate the perspectives of influential persons about such a huge threat to the environment. It is thus quite clear that the United States is not yet enjoying carbon neutrality. In spite of this, a quite different image emerges when looking at China. China has developed a method that is both the quickest and most effective in cutting its carbon emission. To begin, China is the only country in the world outside those that have made the discovery of hydrogen fuel and alternative fuel. Sally and I have each created our own video on the issue, and both of our videos can be seen here. The first step China will take toward lowering its carbon emissions is going to be increasing the use of alternative fuels and transportation methods. Transportation is responsible for more than 27% of all carbon emissions, and if that emission were to be decreased, approximately half of the problems that have been identified might be remedied. What measures will China take if other countries are unable to control the amount of carbon emissions caused by their transportation systems? In China, the majority of people travel by train since it is the most convenient option, because of the convenience that trains provide. The vast majority of individuals will choose to make use of them rather than drive themselves to their destination. When it comes to cutting down on carbon emissions, China suddenly has a competitive edge. Because of these and other factors, the government maintains control over as China is the only country that can carry out the decisions, nobody will stand in the way of them. Therefore, Beijing won't have to limit any private sector for the time being. This is the first hydrogen energy train that is capable of moving swiftly, and it can reach a peak speed of up to 100 miles per hour, 160 kilometers per hour, 160 kilometers per hour. The train was manufactured by the Krusi, the Chungking Railway Vehicles, and the Chengdu Rail Transit Organization, and it made its first appearance in January of 2023. Hydrogen is used in the operation of not just the locomotive's engine, but also its whole propulsion system. This train's battery has the capacity to traverse a single route of 600 kilometers without needing to be recharged. Its motor can travel at a maximum speed of 508 kilometers per hour and will result in a reduction of 10,000 tons of carbon emissions annually. The building of this train is an example of China's goals, since it is a forward-thinking project that is being undertaken. Also, it is quite evident that China is going to advance on the zero-carbon project in the succeeding years after it has been launched. And additionally, more trains will also start running after the project has been initiated. The hydrogen powertrain project has matured into a successful endeavor, which will help China come closer to the target that it has set for itself. In addition to this, China is going to begin producing further vehicles that are powered by hydrogen, which will get us closer to a greener future, which is something that everyone still craves. It doesn't matter how many projects China completes, Western nations will always be angry about something. This time around, the Western train that runs on hydrogen power is being referred to as a fuel cell by its proponent. According to reports from Western media outlets, the benefits of this program are not even close to being as positive as the general population believes them to be. They are pointing many fingers in the direction of the potential of hydrogen propulsion systems. The British Broadcasting Corporation, BUBCEP, offered some information on the fuel model nature of this hydrogen engine while utilizing the same keyboard. In addition to that, it was said that research was being conducted in the United Kingdom to create a train that ran on hydrogen instead of diesel. At the present, a number of these various initiatives are receiving a large amount of attention from Western media outlets. Do you not believe that Western nations are unable to construct these trains in an effort to maintain their position of preeminence in comparison to China, if they do not result in a profit? You, on your own, are going to have to decide whether or not you think it is beneficial to pursue this opportunity. Do you think that China will soon be able to cut its carbon emissions with the aid of this initiative? Is it possible for China to become carbon neutral by the year 2020? What are your thoughts on the degree of criticism that has been leveled at these trains in the West that you can view by clicking on this video? Yet another surprising undertaking by China.